Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, May 12th. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 115 days. The game against Michigan in 199 days. Yes, under 200 days. It's practically here. It has been quite a varied week or so of topics on this show. We've talked about TV and its impact on the fall schedule late last week, and then we talked about some recruiting, early previews of college football playoff contenders. Today we are going back to the Buckeyes. We are doing our post-spring look at the two deep. And today we're talking linebackers. We're going to be doing that with Tony Gerdeman. He and I host the Buckeye Weekly podcast together. We've dropped a couple episodes of that already this week as well. He always says nice things to me too. So Tony, thanks for being here. And thanks for being so supportive.
Tom, the reason I say so many nice things is because you edit the show. And you take out all of the other things that I also say. But kudos to you for having that kind of power.
It's yes, always be the person with the final cut. That is the most important lesson in TV and video production. Yes. So let's talk a little linebackers today. And this to me is like a really weird position to sort out because you've got the scheme change, which seems like it's going to impact on what they're looking for at some of those positions in terms of skills and players. They might not be using as many linebackers as they did before. There is a returning team captain who's kind of like a forgotten man in some ways. One guy who moved positions last year, a transfer who moved positions this spring, one of the presumptive frontrunners missed a bunch of time this spring. Is this the hardest spot on the field to figure out the two deep right now?
Yeah, I think it is. And Jim Knowles said something to that effect last week when basically asked, like, there's still some stuff to figure out at linebacker, isn't there? And he said, yeah. And the way I view it is it's kind of like a 4-lane highway bottlenecking down to 2 lanes. And you've got this just congestion and you've got some exits coming up and people are like coming from the left lane trying to get way over into the right lane to get exited. And it just creates this log jam of guys. And I think coming out of the spring, you look at who they have and the fact that they were missing Cody Simon really clogs all of this up even more because he was last year's starting middle linebacker for the bulk of the season, like all but 3 games. And he was also hurt for much of the season. So what does a healthy Cody Simon look like? Because a healthy Cody Simon won the job last year. But now, obviously, as you said, in a new defense, how has he picked it up? We know Jim Knowles cannot speak highly enough of Tommy Eichenberg and the steps he has taken to control this defense and learn it and master it and really take over that middle linebacker position. But again, he was the number 2 to Cody Simon last year. And so what happens when Cody Simon is healthy and Jim Knowles being brand new at Ohio State doesn't know enough about Cody Simon at this point? He hasn't even really talked. You go through and nobody's really talking about Cody Simon right now. And Jim Knowles, when we've talked about the safeties in the past and he hadn't yet seen Josh Proctor and he's like, well, I haven't seen anything from him. I want to see something. I can't really tell you anything about him. There hasn't been really a lot of talk about Cody Simon, and I think that might be a mistake because, again, he was the starter last year, and so he's going to be factored in somewhere, but Jim Knowles has to see him first.
Yeah, there are a lot of kind of moving parts here and a lot of stuff that we don't know, and I think a lot of stuff they don't know yet. So, yeah, there is a lot of stuff that we're kind of taking into consideration when we have this conversation. This is one of those where I'm glad I'm asking the questions and not having to answer the questions. This is a lot easier on my side of things. And, while we're talking about defining some terms, let's define the terms when we're talking about the linebackers. You'll hear us talk about the Will and the Mike and the Sam. I don't know that people necessarily know exactly what those names mean, like what those positions, what they're asking those positions to do, what kinds of players are looking for to fill those roles. Can you let people know the difference between the Will, the Mike, and the Sam?
Yeah, in this Ohio State defense, the Will and the Mike are the 2 inside linebackers. They'll be playing, in between the hashes generally, and those are the 2 linebackers in the defense. Ohio State will be playing a 4-2-5, and so there is no Sam linebacker generally. And so you just have the Will and the Mike playing inside, just standing next to each other and handling the middle of the field. Now, then the Sam would come in, and that would be the true outside linebacker on the strong side, on the tight end side, And really, they will only go to that when they're facing a running team or it's a short yardage situation. Like you would expect a Sam to be out there for the Iowa game, the Wisconsin game, Michigan game, perhaps, where they need to be bigger in the front seven. Having that Sam will allow that, because the Sam, when he's not out on the field, it's going to be the nickel and Tanner McAllister. Tanner McAllister, very good player. He's all of 5'11", 192 pounds or whatever. So that's not necessarily the guy you want playing the edge and sealing things and just trying to keep contained on a 230-pound sophomore running back for Wisconsin or something like that. So that's really the three linebackers. And then, Jim Knowles has to also figure out who does what best, what kind of packaging goes into it. But yeah, that's generally the situation, the definitions, their roles. And the Will and the Mike ideally are interchangeable. One guy can play Mike, one guy can play Will, and then switch back just depending on injuries and happenstance.
Yeah, and the origin of those names, Will starts with W, that has traditionally been the weak side. Mike starts with M, that's the middle linebacker. Sam, as you said, starts with S, that's the strong side linebacker. That's the origin of those names. Sometimes they'll flip-flop those guys, but that is where those names Will, Mike, and Sam come from. So, all right, let's start with that Will position. Who do you think is likely running first there coming out of the spring? And then who else is in the running for that starting job?
Yeah, right now that's Steele Chambers' job, and he won it last year, and he secured it again coming out of spring. I think a lot of that may be because there's who's behind him, who is pushing him. Because when you look in the spring game, it was Diamante Traynham was the second guy at Will, and that's primarily because Taraji Mitchell was the starter at Will last year, then lost the job to Steele Chambers. Then this spring, we see Taraji Mitchell at Mike because Cody Simon was out. So the other guys involved at Will, maybe like a CJ Hicks was playing there as well, and he's still just a true freshman. So I think this is Steele Chambers' job to lose, and he didn't do anything to lose and wasn't necessarily challenged all that much for it, in my opinion. And he should be the guy this year. He's the kind of guy that Jim Knowles wants in this defense. Can run, can cover, can go north-south, can go east-west, like the whole running back that he used to be. The things that you look for in a running back, sometimes they also look for in a linebacker. And one of the things that Jim Knowles also likes about him, and Ryan Day as well, is he has that past as a running back. He knows where the plays are going to go as a running back. So he can think like a running back and be there and meet the running back where he's going to end up.
And, at the Mike position, you said it earlier, I want to see what a healthy Cody Simon looks like, because I feel like we haven't really seen that yet. And, it feels, though, like, you listen to Jim Knowles, and there's been just effusive praise for Tommy Eichenberg all spring. So, Cody Simon was the starter last year. I mean, it feels like Eichenberg got a little bit of a head start on him this year, both in terms of being on the field and also impressing the coaches, while Cody Simon has kind of been sidelined with injuries. I assume that means Tommy Eichenberg is probably the front runner there coming out of the spring right now?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know people will look at Tommy Eichenberg and associate him with Tuff Borland and this slow middle linebacker thing, but they've been really impressed with everything that he's doing. He processes things quickly, which helps him to move quickly. And so, yeah, it's been a good sign that Jim Knowles has been so happy with Tommy Eichenberg, and they love his leadership. And he's not the loudest guy, but he's dependable. He knows the defense. You can give him whatever, and he wants more. Like he understands it. He can process it. He can take the classroom to the field, as they like to say. And behind him this spring, it was Taraji Mitchell. I think maybe Gabe Powers was working in there a little bit, and sometimes the Will and the Mike, like we said, fluctuate. So, he was another guy in there, but really it's Tommy Eichenberg, and I don't know how much Taraji Mitchell is going to push him. Taraji Mitchell, I think, has a role on this team. He's a captain, former captain, possibly captain it once again. Is he a special teams guy? Is he just one of those guys that, you find a role for him, you put him somewhere, and then, let's see what Cody Simon does. I think it may be too much to overcome at this point, which sounds crazy to say because it's the middle of May, but just it's difficult to imagine them speaking so highly of Tommy Eichenberg as they have been. And then it would take Cody Simon to beat him out, basically, at this point, rather, because it doesn't sound like Tommy Eichenberg is coming back down to earth in any kind of way. Not that he's going to be an All-American or whatever, but what they've seen out of him, they're happy with. They're confident that he can hold up.
Yeah, they have someone there who it feels like they are looking at that as an, okay, like, we're set there. If someone else, if Cody Simon comes in and is super impressive and jumps ahead of him, great. But they have an answer there where, it's not a position where, you'll hear them talking about it necessarily as a concern right now, which is, as far as things go this time of year, like that's not a bad spot to be in. And a very interesting spot to be in is Sam, because they have guys in the team that sort of fill that role. I mean, Palaie Naoteote is kind of the person you sort of always think of as the Sam linebacker on this team. But as you mentioned earlier, it's really up in the air how often that spot's going to get used. Is that just like it's a 3rd and goal at the 2 kind of spot most of the season, and then you're going to play Iowa and you're going to play Wisconsin, and then you're going to see it more? Or, how often is there a Sam linebacker? And when there is, who is that guy?
Well, and that's going to be a great question. And right now in the spring, it was Palaie Naoteote working there, and also redshirt freshman Reed Carrico, who works some at Will, works some at Sam. Palaie works some at Sam, also some at the Jack, defensive end position. So there's some cross training for both of those guys as they have all of these possibilities, and they're trying to figure out ways. You can't just have them watch. You've got to get them some reps somewhere to see what they can do, and get them reps in as many different places. So Jim Knowles has an idea and can see on film what can guys do, and then it becomes, how the offensive line is your 5 best, and you figure out how it's supposed to be. At linebacker, will it eventually be the 3 best? Because if your number 1 Sam is your 6th best linebacker, what sense does that make? So does Cody Simon a Sam? Is Diamante Trainum, who can do some different things, does he become a Sam because he's a little bit more able to maybe defend the pass, given his history as a running back, which everybody knows that's how you become a great pass defender. You be a running back. But he has this unique athleticism. And that's something else Jim Knowles said last week, was just about finding the ways that the packages that you can utilize these different guys. And you want to get as much on film as possible in the spring so that you can see how they perform. And then you start to get an idea of, well, what if we use this guy in this way, this guy in this way? And that's some of the stuff that you work on in fall early on before you start game planning. But yeah, I don't know, Tom. The Sam position, I tend to think that it will, and it would be great if Palaie Naoteote, is healthy and finally he had a couple of good years at USC, but came back down with injuries. Last year played okay at times for Ohio State when he was healthy, and it's been so rare. But if he could be that 3rd best linebacker or whatever, and have that role, but I don't know how often they're going to use it outside of that, because even Jim Knowles said, like, Tanner McAllister played a lot against 12 personnel, and they're okay with that. And now the Big 12 personnel is a little bit different, because it talks about how they're 2 tight end sets of 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. A lot of times it's more like that second tight end is closer to just a flex slot receiver type of thing. So you need somebody to cover him anyway. And that's something that Tanner McAllister does, but also that you don't need your 5'11", 192-pound defensive back necessarily blasting into the backfield. You can use him in a support role to force things back inside to the linebackers, to the bigger safeties. So there are ways around it that you don't just have to avoid using a nickel against teams that run the ball.
Yeah, and he has talked about that nickel not really having primarily run support kind of responsibilities. That is primarily a pass defense type position. So, yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Yeah, because the Iowa 12 personnel or the Wisconsin 12 personnel, Wisconsin's not running a lot of real super athletic flexed out tight ends. There's a lot of 260-pound beefy dudes and on their tight end roster. So yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to see how they defend that. I'm already excited for the Ross Fulton shows talking about some of this stuff a little later on this year, because that seems like the kind of stuff that Ross is going to have some really interesting thoughts on. So we'll get to those shows a little later on. But first, we have to talk. Last thing I want to ask you about, and I give you a heads up on this because I feel like this is a question that you could really kind of spin around in your head a whole bunch of different ways. Okay, the wild cards here. Chip Trainum, how quickly can he adjust to a new position, a new program? CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers, how quickly can they be both physically and mentally ready to contribute in meaningful ways? Which of those guys, Tony, do you think plays the most snaps this fall of those three kind of wild cards here?
And I did not appreciate this question, Tom, as you know. We even coming out of spring, like Chip Trainum was the second will in, but I guess he should be. He's the more experienced guy. Although, is he? Like, yes, he knows how to play college football. CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers, two true freshmen who should still be in high school. So they're really just learning things. So it'll be up to either one of those guys to catch up and then surpass as the season goes on. And I do think you'll see both Hicks and Powers receiving more snaps in November or October, maybe, than they do in September as they get better. But at some point, you got to decide if you're going to give them their fifth game or not. And with CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers, you could see both of those guys being valuable special teamers. And so if you're going to play them on special teams and you're not going to redshirt them, then why not find some snaps for them? So I think they would both have to catch up on the snaps that Trainum gets. Oh, Tom, again, not appreciative of this question at all. But I will say, and I'll probably be one of the few people to say this, I'll say Chip Trainum has the more snaps than either of those two guys, because you brought him for a reason, and you bring in a transfer portal guy for a reason. And so I'm going to say Chip Trainum.
And I think that's the right answer. I kind of went around in circles on that for a little while too, and did the same special teams math that you were doing. And, does that make them more likely to play regular snaps during the season? I do think you end up with Chip Trainum because he is further up the depth chart right now. He's more experienced in terms of just being a college player. He's probably a little more physically ready to play immediately at the college level. So I do think that is the right answer ultimately, but we will find out altogether later on this year when our buddy Dan Hope puts together the snap counts, because I don't want to do that math. So thank you to Dan Hope for his service, and thank you all for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Tony and I did an episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast that dropped on Wednesday, where we talked about a whole bunch of fun stuff, including changing the Big Ten divisions around and some other good stuff. So you can check that out. You can find that wherever you find this. Also, Mark Givler and Kevin Noon are down on their southern swing down in Georgia and Florida right now, wrapping up their second week down there. They have turned out an incredible amount of content. They dropped a new episode of the Big Me Kickoff podcast a couple days ago. If you haven't listened to that one, check that one out. Alex Gleitman does Around the Oval. Mark Givler and Bill Green do Gives in the Bank. You can find all those great shows just wherever you find this. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of them. You can subscribe right there so you never miss an episode, and also leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help other folks find those shows, in which we do truly appreciate. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.